I'm Laura Plum, and I would like to look at the stars of the stars. So we just had the Grammys on Sunday, and I'm looking at the stars of the stars. By that, I mean the Jyotish chart, sidereal Vedic astrology system. Today, I'm going to show the chart of Taylor Swift, of course. And there are two potential birth times given for Taylor Swift. Now, it's not publicly known what time she was born, but there are two times given. One is 5:17 in the morning, the other is 8:36 in the morning. We know that she was born December 13th, 1989, and she was born in Reading, Pennsylvania. The 5:17 a.m. birth time would make her a Scorpio rising. With the December 13 birth date, that already gives her Sun in Scorpio and Mars in Scorpio. And I definitely think we can see that Scorpio in her. She's very strong, very creative, very sharp, very clear, very determined, very brave. So I'm not sure we also need Scorpio to be her rising sign, if you see what I'm saying. It's not that it's not that. I don't know what time she was born. We don't even know for sure if 5:17 or 8:36 are right. I'm not sure where these two birth times came from. But if we look at the 8:36 birth time, the very first time I was ever shown a chart of Taylor Swift, it was this 8:36 birth time. And immediately I said, that makes sense. And so I thought today I would just tell you why that one makes sense to me, although I'm okay with being wrong. But the reason that 8:36 seems to make sense to me, because it gives Sagittarius as a rising sign. And I feel like her face has that sort of noble equine look. You know, she sort of has that, the symbol for Sagittarius is the half man, half horse, the centaur, and he's got his bow and arrow and he's aiming for the stars. And she feels like a person like that. She's completely aiming for the stars. But Sagittarius people are very idealistic. She feels idealistic to me, very positive, very sunny, sometimes even spoken of as a little bit of that Pollyanna-ish. They're very optimistic. They don't really believe we're going to have a rainy day. They go into life, you know, with energy, like that horse. It's ready to gallop. So the Sagittarius rising person can also be very philosophical, very spiritual, very jovial, and they love their friends. They'd love to run with the wind in their hair, right? They love to play. They can be very playful. They can be great Epicureans. But one thing that you really will notice about Sagittarian people is that they've got that sweeping, epic view. They have a broad mind. They like to see the big picture and they like to see the patterns of things. Again, I think she's very much like that. And also, we've seen a lot of people like Maria Callas, who are great musicians, opera singers. Their voice really brings forth, is really evocative of strong and sweeping emotions, and even stories and epics that tell the story of who we are. I think you can see that in Taylor Swift's music. She really tells the story of who the people who listen to her music and like her music feel themselves to be, right? So Sagittarius rising seems to make sense. I think physically her face looks like that. I think you see that the way she meets the world has got a lot of Sagittarius to it. But also, I think what makes this really work, in my opinion, is that when she was born, Saturn was in Sagittarius, Mercury was in Sagittarius. And what that means is that Saturn and Mercury will be then in the rising sign if she's Sagittarius rising. Now, if you look at that, you can see that Saturn or Mercury then go into the ascendant, go into the rising. And to me, she's got that figure, that physical body. Saturn will elongate someone, make them thin, even sort of bony. Mercury is fire, but also a little bit of vata, so it's air. So it's got those qualities of where her physical body is long, thin, sort of long and strong. She's somewhat long and lanky. And the other thing about Mercury in the rising sign is that it makes a person very communicative, easy to connect with. She seems like that. She arrives at the Grammys and it's all hugs and happiness and just a very friendly sort of a person. Mercury in the rising sign can make a person even somewhat talkative, but certainly easy flow with their words, easy flow with their capacity to converse. Saturn in the rising sign is interesting because it can do a couple of things. It can make a person a little bit like as a child, very mature, very responsible, the one that people will call the old soul, right? As a child, they are already very sort of grown up. They act very mature. Saturn in the rising sign can also make a person shy. I'm not saying that she is. It can make somebody shy, but at the same time, I've seen a lot of people with Saturn in the rising sign who at a young age are given a position. They're given a position to speak, to teach, to sing, right? Somehow I think through hard work, they really do rise. And what I also find interesting about that is that she is in a Saturn Dasha period. Her Saturn Dasha period only started end of September 2019. And before that, she would have been in a Jupiter Dasha period, and that's 2003, September of 2003. She's 13 years old. And of course, the Jupiter period is a period of time when a person's going to feel there's momentum. The universe has got their back. Their heart almost sprouts wings and they can fly. They feel like they're soaring. There's a great expansiveness. Opportunities come their way. They feel fulfilled. They might feel just so much more is working for them. It makes sense, especially if Sagittarius is her rising sign. Jupiter rules the sign of Sagittarius, that a Jupiter period would give her that rise. And of course, she had a fabulous rise. The other thing about Sagittarius as the possible right birth time for her, the right correct ascendant for her, is that puts Jupiter on the other side of the sky, here in Gemini, in her seventh house and with her moon. So her Jupiter Dasha period would have given her a lot of emotional expansion, joy, happiness, but it also means Jupiter's aspect in her rising sign. And so, yeah, you could see that she would be more physically seen, visible, wanted, desired. It's like all eyes on anybody with that strong Jupiter aspect in the rising sign in their Jupiter Dasha period. So that started in 2003. I figured that when she was 17, 17 is 2007. So sure enough, she's in her Jupiter Saturn period. So the sub or Antardasha period is Jupiter Saturn. When she's at the Grammys, wins an award, and Kanye jumps up on stage and takes the mic. So Saturn is in her rising sign. So that was something that happened physically. That's something that happened while she was very visible, while she was standing in front of an audience and televised. So Saturn has a tendency to draw that to her physical presence, right? Something that would, well, let's say something that would really cause her to have to dig deep, to be resilient, and to learn and grow, right? Saturn is always bringing us lessons. So she had an extremely unfortunate karmic lesson at the age of 17. So that's Saturn coming in there. I think the other thing that's interesting about what's happened to her, she's got Jupiter in the seventh house of relationships. So it makes sense that in her Jupiter Dasha period, especially when she went into this Jupiter Venus period in late 2011, I mean, it's August of 2011, that went for almost 3 years. Yeah, of course she was dating. And of course she would be dating to explore, and why not? What I find interesting as well about her having Sagittarius rising is that would put Venus in the second house. Second house is the house of throat and voice, and Venus is beauty. Venus is art. Venus is music. And it would really make a lot of sense that Venus would be in the second house of anybody who's got a great voice and who uses their voice poetically, artistically, etc. So it makes a lot of sense. Sun Mars in the 12th house means there may have been some loneliness as a child, but she's always been driven to grow spiritually, to evolve spiritually. She says that in her documentary, Miss Americana. K2 in Cancer, in the 8th house, also gives a real drive for growth, transformation, having to dig deep. And I think that comes through in her music and her songwriting, having to dig deep into the essence of who she is, right? The 8th house is about transformation, but it's about digging down, going into the roots, under the surface, and pulling ourselves up from the roots to really, really rise. So I'm making a case for the 8:36 birth time, Sagittarius rising. Also, one more thing, she began a Saturn Dasha period in late 2019, autumn of 2019. And it's since then that she's really spoken up and she's really been courageous in speaking her truth. And Saturn ultimately, both Jupiter and Saturn are planets of truth, but Saturn is about the hard truths, you might say. Saturn, a message from Saturn, who is in the archetypes, the farmer, is only the essential, right? So anything superfluous, anything that isn't true, it just has to fall away. And it just is amazing how much she gets challenged by people in the outer world. She is very challenged. But all of these challenges just cause her to carve a deeper place in her where she is even more truthful and more determined to be the star that she is. There's lots more we could say about Taylor Swift in this chart, but given that I don't absolutely know the rising sign, I think I'll finish there. I hope that you always remember that you too are a star, and check out my website to learn more about yourself or to run your own chart. Okay, thank you. Blessings to you.